All right, guys. Well, good evening. Glad that you're here. And so I have been thinking about kind of what we want to do with some other series other than the Bible Has Answers. And so I've had several people ask questions about texts that I guess you would just call them maybe difficult text or tough text, like texts that are just maybe a little more tedious when you study them, or maybe there's a lot of debate about what that text actually means. And so what we'll probably do is I've had enough of those, and there's enough of those also to pull from, where we may do a series just entitled just Tough Text in Scripture, and just go through and talk about some of those hard texts, maybe even some texts that have divided denominations over the years or split different groups of people within the Christian church, and talk about those. And I think that'll be helpful too, because there are probably some texts that you may even, and if y'all think of one and go, man, I've read that, I do not understand it, and no one's ever really given me a good explanation on it. If there's any of those that you guys might have, write those down, that you're just like, or maybe just something they go, I just do not understand how somebody gets where they get with that specific text. So if there's one of those tough texts, you could put that in there, and then, like I said, hopefully we can do that. And then my goal also is to, and I've been working with Josh on this, is to do go through the four views of four main eschatology views for the end times, four views of how the end will come, how Christ will return, what all that looks like. Some of you may be familiar with a premillennial, amillennial, postmillennial. If you're not, it's okay. There's a ton of different working parts within each one of those views. And if you're not really on it all the time, you can get kind of confused as to what comes first with each view. And there are extremely passionate people on each side of their view. And while I don't think that any of those views are outside of the Christianity or the Bible, we'll go through there and just kind of look at them. And then that may spark kind of you to go and search yourself or look deeper into that. So, but we'll do that at some point. That's coming. But tonight, we will continue in The Bible Has Answers. And we had a question in regards to Samson. And then I also did a podcast last week with a buddy of mine on the H2 show. And I just kind of guessed, come on and talk about theology, Bible, or whatever topic somebody asked us. And so somebody here asked about Samson. They said they had never read the story of Samson, and they read the story of Samson. And they were like, this is the craziest guy I've ever read about in the Bible. He's the craziest historical figure. Has to be. Not that there's not other amazing things that happen in Scripture, but just what he does, and the type of swagger and a little bit of arrogance that he has. He's a drinker, he's a womanizer, and he's as strong as Hercules. And so all of those are not great combinations to have when you don't maybe have the greatest head on your shoulders, if you will. But even amidst all of that, God uses Samson for a really neat, specific purpose. And so we'll talk about Samson tonight, kind of what can we learn from the life of Samson, and also how did God use him. And so we'll talk about some big themes tonight. But what I want to do is kind of give you some context, unpack the book of Judges is where we find Samson. We'll unpack that at first, and then what I want to do is, and I don't know if it'll take us too terribly long, but Samson is found in Judges, and if you have your Bibles, you can flip there. Judges 13, 14, 15, and 16. It's not a terribly long read necessarily, but, it is semi-lengthy, but not super long. I'd like to just read through the story, kind of from when Samson comes in, when his birth is foretold, all the way to him pressing the pillars out and the temple collapsing on him and killing the Philistines and himself. Just kind of read through that. I kind of thought about bullet pointing it, but I thought I really just want everybody to kind of hear the story. There's really not a dull moment within the story of Samson, and it's really pretty intense. And so if you were like, man, I was going to go home and watch an action movie tonight, well, this will subside for a replacement for that too. So throughout the Bible, and this is something that you just see constantly as we're in the Old Testament through Genesis, you see a ton of unlikely heroes in the Bible. Just men and women that you go, there's no way God's going to use them. They're actually very contrary to what you or I would think would be a really good person to use as far as pushing forth the kingdom of God, or being a great example, or being a leader or an ambassador for the Lord. you just wouldn't think of some unlikely heroes. I think of guys like Moses. I think of, for sure, Abraham, who we're talking about right now. I think about all of the men and women throughout Scripture that you just kind of go, how did God use them? And most of that is not because they were equipped and they just had all the tangibles, but because God sovereignly and graciously moved through the redemptive story of history and used these people in spite of these people, which He's still doing that today. So in spite of us, He's using us in this place in a very small way that actually contributes to a much larger plan. I think about often, if you took all the historical figures in the Bible outside of the Messiah, Jesus, and you just kind of looked at them, it's almost like, let's just say you have a massive river like the Chattahoochee, and you know there's all these small little streams that run into that river. And so those streams, obviously there's a destination point there. And so by themselves, they're not very big or powerful or really able, but once they all gather in that one place on one mission, they're super effective. And so we like that, or little small streams. No matter how large a ministry is or how much stuff that we do and accomplish, we're really all contributing to something that is far greater than ourselves. And so Samson is one of those guys who does that. So in Hebrews 11:32, and the other person that wrote this said, this is crazy that he's in the Hall of Faith chapter in Hebrews 11. You know, you think about that as kind of, dedicated to people that just had enormous amounts of faith, not people that kind of just royally were screwing up like Samson was. But God used that. And so here's the text. Hebrews 11:32-34 says this. And what more shall I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Japheth, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, and put foreign armies to flight. So he's saying all of these people that were listed in there, Gideon, Barak, Samson, Japheth, David, Samuel, and the prophets, they accomplished a ton of things because they trusted in the Lord. And they weren't perfect in their trust, and they didn't get it right all the time, but the Lord used them even in spite of them. So just a little bit of context as we get to the book of Judges, which is what we'll be reading from tonight. We have the story of Samson in the Old Testament book of Judges. And he is mentioned as one of the 14 judges that God appoints to deliver Israel during their time of oppression of the Philistines and some other groups as well. And so just as we kind of get a little bit of context for this, just so we can kind of see kind of where it falls within the redemptive story. So the book of Judges, and I just kind of put this little line out here. So we have Moses. We have Moses who will lead God's people out of the hands of Egypt, through the Red Sea, and then into the wilderness for 40 years of wandering. And so Moses, because of his anger, is unable and not allowed to actually take God's people and see the promised land. So he's not able to see it, right? You'd think if anybody was able to see it, Moses would be able to see it. But Moses isn't able to see it. But Joshua, his predecessor, is able to see it. And so God allows Joshua to move the Israelites into the land of Canaan, which will become Israel. And while he's there, he's able to, you guys remember the walls of Jericho. They march around the walls fall, they're able to come in. And so they set up camp in Canaan, which is going to be Israel. And so everything's kind of going well for a little while. Well, then the people of God begin to just do whatever they want to do. They just do what they want to do. And so because of that, we're going to have this period. So after Moses, after Joshua, we have this period of judges, but it's before we have the first king of Israel, Saul, and then David, and then his son Solomon. So this is after Joshua, but before all of the kings of Israel start to come into play. So Israel's kind of in this transitional period where they don't have a distinct leader because Joshua and all of the elders that Joshua had that were jam-up guys, they've all passed away, and now the people of God are just kind of like, we'll just do whatever is right in our own eyes because they don't have really a leader at this point. And so the word judges literally translates deliverer. So if you think about judges now, you think of somebody with a gavel that is making sure that the trial goes fair, that lawyers aren't doing something that they shouldn't be, that the law of the land is being upheld, and they're kind of the just right. They're the steady beacon amidst all of the chaos in the courtroom against the witnesses. And so we can think about that because that's the first thing I think of is somebody with a gavel and even the old-timey guys with the wigs on ordering the court or you're guilty. Like that's what I kind of think of. Well, these people that he uses, well, obviously all men except for one. Who was the one female judge? Deborah. So we have the one female judge, but they are used as this deliverer by the hand of God to release or to relinquish the pressure of the opposition against God's people. And so God uses these people, and all of them, it seems that some of them do a pretty good job, and then some of them, it's just, they're absolute train wrecks. And God still is able to use those folks as well to kind of push forth His plan of redemption to ultimately redeem His people. Because ultimately, what is God doing? God is ultimately looking back. He is still ultimately fulfilling His promise that He made to Abraham in Genesis 12. Like He's still being faithful to that promise. Even though His people are in rebellion and in opposition to what God's doing, He is, for all intents and purposes, using these people to redeem them. So, as I said, Samson, out of the 14 judges, Samson is the number 12 judge and probably has, just in my opinion, because I've walked through this several times the last couple of weeks, the craziest story and does some of the most erratic, psychotic things that you can think of, and the Lord's still going to use this. And so this is one thing I want us to kind of think about as you hear the story, because we're going to read this in a second, is I want you to see this. The big idea and the purpose is not for us to go, man, I bet Samson looked like he was on steroids. Like he could have been Mr. Olympia. He's so strong, and he's just so powerful. I mean, killing a lion with his bare hands or killing 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey, that's really impressive. All of that stuff is cool, but I want us to see the bigger purpose of this is the story of God's faithfulness. Because you will see in the story as we read, and I'm going to read through it, but you will see that the Spirit of God, the Spirit of the Lord would come upon Samson, and he would be able to do incredible feats. Now, he doesn't always have that power like on tap. He gets it when God gives it to him. So when he is in a position, because often of his terrible decision making, the Lord will give him this ability, and then he brings almost this vindictive judgment against the Philistines, the enemies of God, through his brokenness, which is just so crazy because God doesn't need Samson to wipe out the Philistines. He doesn't need that. He can just do that himself if he wants to, but he's using broken people to ultimately heal people, which is crazy, which is what God does today. So remember, some 800 years before this, we have this promise made to Abraham that your descendants will outnumber the stars of the heavens and outnumber the grains of the sand. And so God is still fulfilling His faithfulness and promise here from the promise He made 800 years before to one man who was a pagan that He called out of that and said, you are now mine, and I will be your God, and all of your descendants will be my people. So it's really just kind of, in my mind, it's just so neat how God uses this, and it's important that we don't get so sucked into the story of Samson. It's really neat, but don't get so sucked into all the details of it thinking, well, maybe I could do that. Well, maybe God, no. That's all been done. God used that specifically in redemptive history, but for us now looking back, we can just go, look how God's faithful. Look how God is merciful. Look how God is just. And so God is so just to let retribution and punishment come against the Israelites, but then He's so merciful and gracious to relieve them of that and then keep them alive so that there can be a continual remnant of His people that will go into the next generation, all the way to Christ. And then ultimately, we have been offered salvation because of God's faithfulness. So, Joshua 24, 22 through 24. I want to just read this in the book of Joshua. This was the mindset of the people pre the judges. While Joshua was alive, so at this point, Joshua was alive, as well as all of the elders that were with Joshua. So Joshua was a faithful, godly man. As for me and my house, what? We will serve the Lord. Like, that is Joshua. And all of his elders and his men that are his right-hand and left-hand guys, they're saying the same thing. So here's what the people of God and the leadership are saying in Joshua 24:22. Then Joshua said to the people, you are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen the Lord to serve him. And they said, we are witnesses. He said, then put away the foreign gods that are among you and incline your heart to the Lord, the God of Israel. And the people said to Joshua, the Lord our God we will serve, and his voice we will obey. Amen, right? And if the story ends there, everything is just really good. So, as we get into the story of Judges, you will see that Joshua, he is actually going to die along with all of the elders. And I want to just read this. I don't have it on the board. I should have put it up there. But I want to read this right here. In Judges chapter, let's see. In Judges chapter, this is going to be Judges chapter 2. Judges chapter 2. And let's start in verse 6. Judges chapter 2. So Joshua in Judges chapter 2 is still alive. Okay, he's still alive. So the beginning of Judges is kind of the end of Joshua's life. And here's what we read. Judges chapter 2, verse 6. When Joshua dismissed the people of Israel went each to his inheritance to take possession of the land. So they all scattered in the land and take their little bit of plot. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua. Right? We're still doing good. Who had seen all the great work that the Lord had done for Israel. Great, right? Joshua's there. Joshua dies, though. He's dying. He's about to die. And the elders are still there. They're alive. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years. 110 years old, Joshua dies. And they buried him within the boundaries of his inheritance at Timnah-Heres in the hill country of Ephraim, north of the mountain of Gash. And all the generations also were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. In verse 11, hear this. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and they served the Baals, foreign gods. And they abandoned the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went after other gods from among the gods of the peoples who were around them, and they bowed down to them. And they provoked the Lord to anger, and they abandoned the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers who plundered them, and he sold them into the hand of their surrounding enemies, so that they could no longer withstand their enemies. And whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them for harm, as the Lord had warned them, and as the Lord had sworn to them, they were in terrible distress. So this is the setting for Judges. This is why they're being judged, because God's hand has been taken off. He's given them into the hand of the enemies because they have worshipped what? Other gods. They've turned against him. And then verse 16 in Joshua 2, or Judges 2 says this, then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. So, I mean, at this moment, if you just stopped at Judges 2:15, God could just be like, I'm done with these people. Like, they're literally worshiping other gods. They're doing the things that all the other nations around them are doing. They were in that land around these people, and they were supposed to be living opposite of these people, and now they're living just like those people. So we go through all of the book of Judges to chapter 13. And so they're supposed to say 16 right there, this last piece, through 16. Is that going to bother some of y'all that that's purple? I'll do that. It's going to bother me. So 13, 14, 15, and 16 is where we'll be. So I want you to notice this cycle. If you read through the book of Judges in its entirety, and we may do that at some point, go through the book of Judges, the entire book, but you will notice this. There will be rebellion by Israel, there will be punishment by God, and then there will be deliverance. That's kind of the cycle. That happens 7 times in the book of Judges. Rebellion, punishment, deliverance. So you just kind of see this cycle over and over and over in the book of Judges where God's people are oppressed. There's punishment because they've rejected and run to something else. They rebel, there's punishment, and then God will raise up a judge, normally an unlikely judge, and that judge comes in, or we can say the word deliverer, which is what that means in Hebrew. This deliverer comes in, and he saves them, or she saves them out of all of their brokenness. There's repentance, and then God restores them. And then the cycle will repeat again as they rebel and do their own thing. So Judges chapter 13. So I'll read a large section, and then we'll just maybe chat about it for a second, then I will just keep reading because I want to read the whole story. It is very cool. So it says this, and the people of Israel, Judges 13, and the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. So they rebel, they do something, what does God do? 40 years in the hands of the Philistines. They rebelled, and the punishment is not light. But actually it is light compared to what he could do. It is light. So there was a certain man of Zorah of the tribe of the Danites whose name was Manoah, not to be confused with Noah, it's Manoah. And his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now, notice this. How many times have we seen this in the Bible so far? Somebody's barren, can't have a kid. God shows up and goes, you're going to have a kid. Now, whether they believe or not, it doesn't matter, because if God says you're going to have a kid, you're going to have a kid. Therefore, be careful and drink no wine or strong drink and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Then the woman came and told her husband, A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from womb to the day of his death. So he is the angel of the Lord right here, and so we've already talked about that being a pre-incarnate Jesus, Christ. And so the angel of the Lord comes, says this to Manoah's wife, which we never get her name. We don't ever get Samson's mother's name. It's just Manoah's wife or Samson's mom. And so we don't ever get her name, but a Nazarite vow, and I believe we can find that back in Numbers. And so a Nazarite vow said a few things. So when you took a Nazarite vow, typically it was something you did after you were born. You didn't have it before. After you were born, you would take a Nazarite vow, and it was like a super devout vow of holiness. I'm going to be holy to the Lord and kind of consecrate myself to Him fully. So there was a few rules. The first rule was this: no drink, no wine, no nothing. You would never drink. The second rule was that you would never cut your hair. So the hair can never be cut. So you can't drink, no wine, no grape, nothing like that. Don't cut your hair. And also that you would not touch or be around anything unclean, primarily dead corpses, animal or human, which we will see. Samson's going to break all that really quick. So then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are to do with the child who will be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, Behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me. And Manoah arose and went after his wife and came to the man and said to him, Are you the man who spoke to this woman? And he said, I am. And Manoah said, Now when the words came true, what is to be the child's manner of life, and what is his mission? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, or eat any unclean thing. All that I commanded her, let her observe. So he tells her husband, This is what I commanded to your wife. Make sure that none of these things get broken. Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, Please let us detain you and prepare a young goat for you. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, If you detain me, I will not eat of your food, but if you prepare a burnt offering, then offer it to the Lord. For Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, What is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you? And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one who works wonders. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And when the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar. Now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. The angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, we shall surely die, for we have what? Seen God. There again, another clue to what the angel of the Lord is, I would say pretty confidently that is the pre-incarnate Jesus. So, but his wife said to him, if the Lord had meant to kill us, he would have not accepted a burnt offering and grain offering at our hands, or shown us all these things, or now announced to us such things as these. And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson, and the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in Mahaneh Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. So they have a son, and you ever just notice that when these things happen, like the people being finite are like, we surely seen God, he's going to kill us. And she's like, no, he wouldn't have killed us. He accepted the offering, he went up into heaven. This is great. Like, if he was going to kill us, he'd have killed us then. Like, we're going to have a son. Isn't it so crazy how, like, nobody just goes, oh yeah, totally cool, no big deal. This happens all the time to us. We always see the angel of the Lord come down and tell us things. So, but they have a son named Samson. And so the Spirit of God is stirring in him. So notice this. I just want you to see this. This is not a license to go do whatever you want. But it is saying that God is going to use even the most broken for a particular reason. And specifically in this story, he is using Samson and all of his psychoticness in order to bring judgment against the enemy of God, whom God told Joshua and them to do what? Get them out of the land. That's what they were told to do in the first place. They were supposed to get him out of the land. So, it says Samson, verse 14, so Samson is a young man now. Samson went down, so we have no real recollection of his childhood. It's just, he's a young man. Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Then he came up and told his father and mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. But his father and mother said to him, is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all of our people that you must go to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. So Samson sees a Philistine woman in Timnah, and he goes, that's the one I want. Dad, Mom, make that happen. And they're like, surely you could, what about a relative around here? Or surely somebody that's within the circumcision party? Surely you could go after an Israelite woman, not a Philistine woman. His father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord. So even I want you to see this, even his desire to go after this woman named Timnah, and it's going to be chaotic, that is something that God is using specifically in the story for judgment. That is not, like, we should never now go, well, we should just go and do something really, really crazy, and maybe God will use that to judge our enemies. Well, no. We wouldn't say that anymore. This is unique and specific. This is what we would call descriptive, not prescriptive. This isn't prescribing something that Christians do. It is describing something God did at a specific period in time in history. Just want us to get that clear. I don't want anybody going out here thinking you can go fight 1,000 men with a jawbone of anything. So Samson went down with his father. His father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord, verse 4, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel, right? Because what happened at the very beginning? 40 years they're going to be over you guys. Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah, and behold, a young lion came toward him roaring. Even if a lion comes to you not roaring, that's problem for concern. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. He rips apart a lion as you would a young goat, like a baby goat. He rips this apart. He's got no weapon. He just rips him apart. I would have told the first person I'd have come to. If I didn't know him, I'd say, you ain't going to believe what I just did. But notice this, the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, which is why he was able to do it. And after some days, verse 8, he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. So he has already been kind of betrothed to this woman, and he will be going to a wedding feast very soon, a 7-day feast. And as he comes back from Timnah, he passes by the carcass of the lion. Now, normally you would have maggots and bugs or maybe other animals feeding on it. But in this case, there is a swarm of bees, and there is a honeycomb inside of the carcass that they have built in there. And he scraped it out into his hands and went on eating it as he went. And he came to his father and mother and gave some to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. That would have been helpful because I wouldn't have eaten it. Where'd you get this at? Oh, I killed a lion earlier. It's out of his mouth. Oh, that's wonderful. So listen, what is a Nazirite vow? Don't cut the hair, don't drink any wine, and don't be around dead things. This joker's scraping honey out of a dead animal. And there's nothing out of a dead animal that I'm pulling out to eat. So he says, his father went down and he gives it to it. He's like, hey, Mom, here, Dad, try this. And they just eat it. They don't think nothing of it. His father went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there. For so the young men used to do. So it was customary. They go to Timnah. They set up this feast for the wedding feast. As soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. Now, these are Philistines. So 30 Philistine companions they bring to be with him. Now, some scholars would say that because Samson is an Israelite and he's getting married to this Philistine woman, that never happened. So they were thinking, something's up. Let's send about 30 boys down there to kind of maybe keep an eye on him. Maybe he has ill intentions, right? Maybe he's not who he says he is. But obviously that's going to kind of be his groomsmen, like his party, his groomsmen party. And Samson said to them, let me now put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. So Samson says, I'm going to give you a riddle. You got the 7 days of the feast to figure it out. If you figure it out, I'll give you 30 pieces of clothing. But if you don't figure it out, you guys owe me 30 pieces of clothing. So, right, simple little wager. He's betting. He's betting and gambling here. Should be doing that. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you should give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. And they said to him, put your riddle that we may hear it. Now, everybody is probably pretty heavily drinking and intoxicated at this thing. So they're gambling, and Samson's going, let me give you guys a riddle, see if you can get it. So here's the riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. That's the riddle he gives to them. Now, there's no way for them to know what this is. Now, the answer we know is the lion and the honeycomb, because that's what he did. But he ain't told nobody about it, so nobody knows but him. And in 3 days, they could not solve the riddle. Well, yeah, of course they couldn't. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, so they come to his wife, kind of in private, during the 4th day of the feast, entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Y'all, the Philistines don't play. Like, they're a brutal people. They said, you're going to find out what this answer is, because if not, we're going to burn you and your daddy and everybody in your house. So his wife now has what? Super incentive to get him to tell them the answer. Have you invited us here to impoverish us? And Samson's wife wept over him and said, you only hate me. You do not love me. You have put a riddle to my people, and you have not told me what it is. And he said to her, behold, I have not told my father nor my mother. He's like, don't feel bad, sweetheart. I ain't told anybody what this is. And shall I tell you? She wept before him the 7 days that their feast lasted. And on the 7th day, he told her, right? Because she pressed him hard. Now, she didn't say they threatened me. She just said, you just don't tell me. Like, I mean, I'm sure maybe the comment, I guess you just don't love me. I'm going to be your wife, and you're going to just keep secrets. So she tells him. Then she told the riddle to her people. So she gives the people, the 30 guys, the answer. And the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. Now, just men, for just a second. You should never say that about your wife. If somebody's asking your wife a hard question, and she gives in and gives them the answer, if you say to them, had you not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle, you probably don't have a wife anymore. Or she's going to be charged with murder later. So, don't say that. Samson is not very good with words. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. And he went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town and took their spoil and gave the garments to those who he had told the riddle. Y'all, Ashkelon from Timnah I just looked this up during my study. That is 23 miles away from Timnah. If Kate or Parker lose their mind, or if I get really upset about something, what is something that you should probably go do? What do you tell people if they're really hot? Go cool off. Go for a walk. He's upset, and he goes for a 23-mile walk. And when he gets to this place, he's still upset. And he kills 30 men. Now, why does he kill 30 men? Because he's going to take their clothes, because he lost the riddle, because his wife told, and he's going to go take those 30 pieces of clothes back to the 30 guys that he told the riddle to. So he goes and kills, now here's the deal. He goes and kills 30 Philistine men to go bring 30 Philistine men the spoils of the clothes. So he's super hot about this. He struck down 30 of them, took their garments, brought it back. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house. So he doesn't even complete the wedding feast and the festival, though that is his wife for all intents and purposes. He leaves and goes home to his dad. I'm not dealing with this. Hey, son, what happened? Well, they solved the riddle, so I killed 30 of their people, and then that's how I paid them off. And Samson's wife was given, listen to this, his wife is now given to his companion who had been his best man. So his dad goes, well, I guess Samson's not in the picture anymore. Here, I'm going to give my daughter now to Samson's best man. Verse 15, chapter 15. After some days, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat. He's going to make it right. He goes back to Timnah and says, I brought a goat. I'd like to repair this. We don't know how long, how many days it was, but after some days. And he said, I will go into my wife in the chamber. I'm going to go and see her. But her father would not allow him to go in. And her father said, I really thought that you had utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? So dad goes, I already gave your wife away to your best man. My other daughter, her younger sister, she's pretty good looking. Why don't you take her? That'd be good. Please take her instead. And Samson said to them, this time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do harm to them. So Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took torches. And he turned them tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. So he's so upset that his father-in-law has given away his wife and tried to pawn off the younger sister, who he's like, she's beautiful, you should take her. Samson gets upset, and he runs and goes catches 300 foxes and ties pairs of them together. So 150 pairs of foxes, lights their tails on fire, and when he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines, and set fire to the stacked grain and to the standing grain, as well as the olive orchards. Then the Philistines said, who has done this? And they said, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion. I mean, like, notice the impulse of this. Okay, you want to do that? You want to take my wife away from me? That's fine. I don't want her sister. I'm going to go catch, I mean, if you catch one fox, that's impressive. You catch 300 and tie their tails together and light them all on fire and send them through the grains and through the village of the Philistines, burning everything to the ground. And the Philistines came up and burned her. Listen to this. So this is what happened after he has set the foxes out. They come up and they burned her and her father with fire. They just come up and set her on fire, and the dad. Because they're thinking, this is y'all's fault. Y'all should have not just given her away so quickly. And Samson said to them, if this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you. And after that, I will quit. And he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow. Hip and thigh was almost a Hebrew phrase for from head to toe, like struck them up and down with a great blow. And he went down and stayed in the cleft of the rock of Edom. In other words, he probably killed those men who did the burning to his former wife and father-in-law. And so then it says that he goes down and stays in the cleft of the rock at Edom. So at this point, he's kind of like, I've done what I've done. I'm done kind of being destructive. And he goes and kind of hides in a rock. Then the Philistines came and encamped in Judah and made a raid on Lehi. And the men of Judah said, why have you come up against us? The Philistines are now attacking this Judah camp, the camp of Judah. They said, we have come up to bind Samson to do him as he did to us. In other words, we have come to take him back. He's done burn up all of our grain. Because at this point, this is harvest season. And so they're thinking, well, how are we going to recover from all this? Then, listen to verse 11, then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Edom and said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is this that you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them. So much for do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They burned them, they did me wrong, so I did them wrong. Now, notice this. Judah sends 3,000 soldiers to go to this cave to tell Samson he needs to come back. Now, why 3,000? Because they know what a psychopath he is, and they know what he's capable of. They're like, okay, we need to send, we're not going to send 30 dudes. We need to send a whole army. And they said to him, we have come down to bind you that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines. And Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves, because that would end well for nobody. They said to him, no, we will only bind you and give you into their hands. We will surely not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came out shouting to meet him. So they come out to meet him because what are they about to do? They're about to kill him. They're for sure going to burn him. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became as the flax that is caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands, and he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey. It had to be fresh. We don't use no old donkey bone to whoop people. He finds a fresh donkey bone and put out his hand and took it, and with it he struck down 1,000 men. Y'all, listen, there's probably not too much of a price I wouldn't pay for a pay-per-view Netflix special live footage to watch Samson do this. Any UFC or boxing fight, I promise, wouldn't top this. There would be nothing cooler than watching him do this. He strikes down 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey, and Samson said, he then sings a song about it. With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have struck down 1,000 men. You know you're either psychotic or a really bad dude if you're just going to sing a song after you do this. And as soon as he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand, and that place was called Ramath Lehi, which is translated, hill of the jawbone. So he names the place. And he was very thirsty. Well, I imagine he would be thirsty. He was very thirsty, and he called upon the Lord and said, you have granted this salvation by the hand of your servant, and shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? Like, I'm pretty exhausted from this, doing all this killing 1,000 people is a lot of work. And God split open the hollow place that is at Lehi, and water came from it. And when he drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore, the name of it was called Hakor. It is at Lehi to this day, and he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. So, I mean, think about this too. God is not saying you shouldn't have done this. He's literally using all of this as judgment against the Philistines, who are terrible people. They're not God's people. They're against him. So, we're in 16, right? Now we're in 16. So this is crazy. I mean, he has done, tying foxes together, sending them into things, killing men with jawbones of a donkey, heaping up these men that he struck down, singing songs, calling it the hill of the jawbone. And all of the time, God is using and shaping and molding these things to judge the Philistines in the midst of Israel's depravity. And so chapter 16. So Samson, this is our last chapter. Samson went down to Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute, and he went into her. What is wrong with you, Samson? So we're messing with dead things. We're killing everybody. Now, the only thing he hasn't done, he was drinking at the festival, probably when he made the bet in the wager. The only thing he hasn't done yet is what? He hasn't cut his hair. That's the one thing he's at least been faithful with that. Samson went to Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute, and he went into her. The Gazites were told, Samson has come here. And they surrounded the place and set an ambush for him all night at the gate of the city. They kept quiet all night, saying, let us wait till the light of the morning, then we will kill him. So the Gazites are like, he's there. We need to kill him. That will be helpful because who knows what else he will do. They kind of surround the city and they wait in ambush for him to leave. But Samson lay till midnight, and at midnight he arose and he took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the two posts and pulled them up, bar and all. So this iron gate, as he's leaving, the men are waiting in ambush. Now you can imagine this. If you're just a regular guy with a bunch of regular dudes with you, Samson leaves at midnight, and let's say you're just stationed near the gate. And they're like, hey, let us know when he comes out. And as he walks out, he just rips up the entire gate, pole and all, out of the ground. If I'm right there, I'm like, okay, I think we need to wait. I think we need to figure out our tactic. Because you better have thousands of men. The two poles, he pulled them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. He just carries them up the hill. After this, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. So now we have, it is only fitting that his downfall would be from this woman. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, seduce him. The Philistines are like, okay, we're going to use this woman who he's fallen for, who is not, she's not an Israelite. She is a Philistine lady. So he has a fatuation with the enemy's women. Seduce him and see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him, and we will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. Y'all, this was like, I think the calculation of this was like, for the time, this is like 100 years' salary or something. Like it was an enormous amount of money they were willing to give her. Because what? He's literally causing destruction, and he's just this specimen. They don't know if they can't just subdue him or take him out. So they're like, well, if we can stop him, then maybe we can find the source of his strength, and we can put an end to him. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies and how you might be bound that one could subdue you. She's not very subtle in how she asked that. Oh, Samson, you're so strong. How would we take your strength away so that somebody would subdue you? Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now she had men lying in ambush in an inner chamber, and she said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he snapped the bowstrings as a thread of flax snaps when it touches the fire. So the secret of the strength was not known. So they're waiting in ambush, and he says, do the 7 bowstrings. That'll subdue me. He snaps them. As soon as she tells him that they're there, she snaps them. So she's waiting for him to really be in trouble so they can come in. That doesn't work. Then Delilah said to Samson, behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. He's pretty sarcastic and pretty arrogant, right? He's telling her just lies, making stuff up. You have mocked me and told me lies. Please tell me how you might be bound. And he said to her, if they bind me with new ropes that have not been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And the men lying in ambush were in the inner chamber, but he snapped the ropes off his arms like a thread. So he's just toying with her. He's mocking with her. Then Delilah said to Samson, until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you might be bound. And he said to her, if you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web and fasten it tight with a pin, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So this is the third little game he's played with her. So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his head and wove them into the web, and she made them tight with the pin and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he awoke from his sleep and pulled away the pin, the loom, and the web. So he's lied to her. This is the 3rd time. With the bowstrings, or the 4th time, right? 4th time? 3rd time. So he's broke the strings. Now notice this, on the 3rd time, he mentions his hair. So he's kind of getting a little bit closer to what it actually is. And then verse 15, and she said to him, now this is just so typical of not of any of you ladies in here, but it's so typical of a woman who is trying to really, really, really lay it on strong. And she said to him, how can you say, I love you when your heart is not with me? What a cheesy line, man. That's like something out of a soap opera. How can you say that you love me if your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies. Almost like if you truly love me, like I'm trying to be with you forever, can't you see that, you giant, strong man? And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day, words are powerful. Words can be strong if you continue. Words are powerful. And urged him, his soul was vexed to death. This man is killing thousands of men with an animal's bone, and this woman just keeps nagging about it, and he's just like, okay, all right. And he told her all of his heart. And he said to her, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. When Delilah saw that he had told her all of his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, come again, for he has told me all of his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep on her knees, and she called a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said to the Philistine, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. That's a really sad verse. And the Philistines seized him, and they gouged out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles, and he ground at the mill in prison, but the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. So if you've ever seen kind of an older movie where like donkeys are tied to a like wooden pole, and they walk around and they pour the meal into the grinder and it grinds it, Samson is lost his strength, his incredible strength. Head is shaved, his eyes have been gouged out, and he is pushing this mill press as he's just walking around. So, in other words, what have they done? They have tamed this beast, finally. He can't threaten us anymore. He's weak. He can't do it. But it says that the hair of his head is beginning to grow back. And so verse 23, now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to rejoice. And they said, our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, our God, little g, has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed many of us. And they said their hearts were merry. They said, call Samson that he may entertain us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he entertained them. They made him stand between the pillars. Now notice this. His strength is taken away. They are worshiping at this temple for Dagon. And all of these thousands of people are gathered in here doing this. Entertain us, Samson. You killed a ton of us already. Come in here and entertain us, right, before we take your life. And Samson said to the young man who held him by the hand, let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them. He says, listen, can I just go? Can I just go up to the main pillars that hold the house, the 2 main ones? Like, you've taken my strength, you've taken my sight. Let me just get up there to steady myself. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women who looked on while Samson entertained. So y'all, just on the roof of this temple they built, you got 3,000 Philistines. Not to mention everybody who is in the bottom part. Then Samson called to the Lord and said, O Lord God, please remember me and please strengthen me only this once. O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. So he's asking for one last burst of strength so that he can have some redemption and bring some justice, if you will, some deliverance to the Philistines. And Samson grasped the 2 pillars on which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. Then he bowed with all of his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed during his life. Then his brothers and all of his family came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Ashtol in the tomb of Manoah his father. He had judged Israel 20 years. Wow, okay, I know that was a lot of reading, but I just thought the whole picture story is really cool to see. So Samson's life, 4 chapters in Judges, is quite remarkable. Is quite remarkable, I would say. And so as I thought about this, and you may have some thoughts running through your head that we can talk about after we finish, but just as I thought about this, I just thought, man, if God can use Samson in that way, he could use, anybody. That's just crazy, the stuff that he's doing. Now, even notice this, Samson, even at the end of the story, notice how I don't know if I'd ever caught this, but notice how he phrases this. In chapter Judges 16, in verse 28, he calls out to the Lord, okay? "O Lord God, please remember me." Now, what does that kind of sound like in the New Testament? Lord, remember me. The thief on the cross. I just was thinking about that. Lord, remember. I'm not saying there's a uber connection, but on the cross, Lord, remember me this day. And the Lord says, you will be with me this day in paradise. I just kind of thought about somebody that's not lived at all the most glorifying life at all. Though in this context, God has been with him and God has appointed him as a judge to these people to release and deliver Israel. But notice even the struggle that Samson has in his sanctification. "O Lord God, please remember me and please strengthen me only this once. O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." So he still is kind of thinking in terms of what? My eyes were gouged out. I'd like to get these boys back a little bit for what they've done to me. Now, God is using him even in his brokenness, and then we read in Hebrews 11 how, he's in that chapter of these men who were faithful. They trust, so apparently the whole time, even though he has all this swagger and strength, he still understands that God has given him this ability. But it doesn't seem that he always gives God the credit until right here. So he doesn't give the Lord credit until what is gone? All of it. So part of the application I was thinking about is Samson, he's too strong for his own good. So he must go from being strong to being weak to know who gave him the strength. God may rip away something that you have in order to show you who is the giver and supplier of the thing that you so elevated even above the giver. Whereas another judge, Gideon, if you remember his story, he was super weak and meek. He didn't want to do anything. "Oh, Lord, there's no way I could do this." So Samson is way too strong, and Gideon is way too unconfident to do anything. So God will do this. God will take the strong in Samson and he will bring him low. And he will take the weak and the meek in Gideon, who doesn't think he's capable, and he will elevate him to give him an element of strength. So it's interesting how there are times in our life where maybe this has to happen. Where God adjusts that. You go from strength to weakness, or you go from weakness to strength. But at the end of both of these stories, what we see is both of them understanding what? God is the giver of these things. And without the Lord, none of this is possible. So in leadership, you don't need to be, Samson has no issue being confident. He has no issue being sarcastic, thinking he's the man. He's toying with everybody, and even after his hair's cut, he thinks he's going to go out there and just handle business, but his strength has been taken from him. And it is only until he humbles himself before the Lord, saying, "Lord, this one last time, give me strength to do this." And here's the deal. There's no legacy for him. There's no arrogance. There's no Philistine woman waiting for him, because once he pushes the pillars, what happens? They die and he dies. But in dying, he's killing all of these Philistine leaders in the middle of that. So through his brokenness and his own disregard for anything, he's put in a position the only thing he can do is cry out to the Lord. And the Lord renews his strength one final time, so that even though Samson probably a little bit was thinking, I'm going to kind of be able to get back for my eyes, ultimately God uses that to defeat the enemy of Israel, to continue Israel's promised people all the way to the Messiah. That's crazy. So it's God's faithfulness, not so much Samson's strength. But I just kind of was drawing a compare and contrast between leadership. There are some leaders that need to be brought low, and some that need to be lifted up, and some that need to have just their stuff in check. So don't be a Samson. Don't be a Samson. And we shouldn't be a Gideon either, where we're just so unconfident that God can do anything, where Samson goes, I can do everything. So neither one of these places is a good place to be. But ultimately, God will bring you low to show you who your strength is. And those are good. Those are really humbling times in our life. And notice the Philistines, they even say when they come to get him, we want to humble him. Even the enemy's going, we want to humble him. Well, ultimately, God gave him into the hands of the enemy, who did humble him, but the ultimate victory was not the enemy's. It was the Lord's. So that's really I just thought that was really neat. I just was thinking about that contrast, compare and contrast. And then, too, not only does God use unlikely people and heroes in the Bible, but God uses unlikely people today. I mean, if you watched every person, if you could see the life story of every person in our room and every other Christian in our area, you would just be like if you could see them 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even just a year ago, you would go, no way. I mean, I have literally looked at people and thought, I just don't see how this is ever going. How are they going to be on fire for the Lord? How would they ever become saved? And the Lord does a work by the power of the Spirit, which is well beyond me or anything you or I could do. And I have seen him transform the lives of people, bringing them from darkness to light, from sinner to saint, from lost to saved. And so it is really cool to see God work and use people. And it's often the least likely candidate who God uses for some of the greatest things within the kingdom. And so we would do well to humble ourselves before the Lord and know that every gift, every ability, whether that's your intelligence, that's your ability to speak well, that is your ability to work hard, that is your strength, that is your whatever that is, and spiritual gifts included, all of that is from the Lord, and all of that can be taken away. Your talents and gifts are not forever. They're just not. And as you get older, those things will fade. And so ultimately, let us not look at the gift elevated above the giver, but always looking to the sustainer of our faith and the one who keeps our soul, which is Jesus Christ. And so I hope that was kind of helpful. I just thought that the life of Samson, I said, we'll just read through the whole story. And it really helps kind of hearing the whole story from start to finish. You kind of get all of the major details instead of me just hitting highlights. So thank you guys for listening to this tonight. I hope it was helpful for anybody that was watching. And Samson has a really, I mean, that's one of the craziest ones, but you can go read the other judges as well and see their story, how God uses them, and just how God is faithful, even in the midst of unfaithful people. We serve a God who is faithful yesterday, today, and forever. So thank you guys for watching. You can join us Sunday at 10 a.m. For our service. And don't forget, we are not this Sunday, but the following Sunday is Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, as well as we'll have our Good Friday service on the 18th. That's Friday before Resurrection Sunday as well. So thank you for being here. We love you. Jesus loves you. And feel free, if you're watching online, to reach out to us if there's anything that we can do for you or pray for you in any way. But know that you're loved and know that the Lord loves you.